I have finally found the absolute perfect jig to be able to do the mortise to install the hinges on a door. And this is it right here. This is from Banggood. Now this is the ENJOYWOOD door hinge mortise and jig that works absolutely fantastic. Now there's several criteria that I think you need to have for any jig that you have in your shop. One, it needs to be very simple and easy to be able to use. Number two, it should not damage the wood or the material that you're working with at all. And number three, it needs to have the minimum amount of moving parts. And number four, it needs to be very flexible as far as adapt to the different type of hinges. I have a very simple setup to be able to do the mortise on the doors. On one side, I use the bench vise to be able to secure the door, and on the other, it rests on a 2x4. And this gives me the perfect working surface now to be able to work on installing the hinges themselves using that mortising jig from Banggood. The jig that I have used for decades is this old jig, and you would have to put this was the index marks right here, and you would slide that on there, and then you had the two holes, and I would have to screw in screws such as this to be able to hold the jig in place. And that I didn't like. Those holes there, then you had to be able to sand, fill, and then paint them, and if it was stained wood, that was certainly a problem. Now this was the standard hinge template that I used. If I needed to change this would have to pop out, and then I had another hard plastic piece that would snap in for a smaller hinge. And again, this was not real convenient, but it's all that I had. And then if I had a larger 4-inch hinge, you use this opening right here, and it only had this very small radius right here, and this type of radius was not available on the larger hinge. Now also, when I used this old jig, I also had a very old router that I used to be able to do that. And that made it where, when I was cutting this, I could not see anything that I was cutting because of the bushing that was in there. And of course, that bushing had the allowance necessary to make this particular jig work. And again, that was very inconvenient, and you had to be cutting basically blind because you could not see in here to actually see what you were cutting. With this new jig, all of those problems are solved. Because one, there's no holes that have to be drilled in. You simply put this in, line it up where you want it to be, and tighten it down. I love the fact that there's no screw holes that's going to go into the door itself. In addition to that, you can use multiple different hinges with this type of jig. Once the jig is actually tight, you have one adjustment to make depending on the size of the hinge. Now if it has that large radius, you're going to use the section on the right, and if it has a small radius, use the section on the left. For the hinge that I have with that large radius, this right side is perfect. To be able to set up this jig, I'm just going to measure down from the top about 7 inches. That's typically what I use, so I can just make a mark right there at the 7-inch line. And then depending on the hinge that I'm using, and let's say it's this hinge, I can put that right there on that line and make another mark on the other side. So that's the space right there for the hinge. And this is so simple. Now that I have the line, I place the jig on there, I'll line up this right side right on that line and tighten it down. That is so simple compared to the old jig. With the jig tightened down and aligned on that line on the right side, I only have one adjustment to make. I'll slide this little slide bar over until it touches the other line, and now it's ready to go. That's the perfect setup to be able to cut out this mortise. This is so much easier than the old jig. I just can't tell you how excited I am. Now the other factor that this jig has, it has a depth gauge on here. The old jig didn't have that. So right there at the corner, I can set the bit to that depth and I'll have the perfect mortise. And we're not done yet. This jig also comes with a bit. Now this is a flush trim bit that you can put into your trim router, and that will give you the perfect cut. So this has the lock collar right here, so you can actually adjust the depth if you need to. And of course the Allen wrench is included, and when you have this in the router itself, you just put it right down to that depth and it will give you the perfect setting. My old jig didn't have that. You had to guess to get the proper depth, and it was a trial and error situation. Now, as I said, it comes with the Allen wrench so that you can adjust that collar, and it does have this center drill to be able to get those screw holes lined up perfectly on the hinge. So this is a complete kit with everything that you need to be able to do the mortises for these hinges and the complete installation of the hinges. And it even had the Phillips and the common to be able to screw the screws in. One more important factor. The hinge itself is recessed away from the edge of the door. Well, this plate right here, not only does it support the jig itself, but it provides the baseline to have that proper distance away from the edge of the door. I showed you the first method using pencil lines to align this hinge. Well, the other way to do it is with the hinge itself. Just place the hinge right inside of the template and then slide that little bar over until it touches the hinge, and you're set. Tighten it down and you're ready to be able to cut the mortise. So how easy is that? And that makes it where you can cut a multitude of different types of hinges of all kinds of different sizes. This really is a very versatile jig. To cut the mortise with this new jig, I can also use this small trim router, which has a clear view of exactly what I am cutting, so I can see everything. I love having the flush trim bit in there because you saw the two methods to be able to set this up for the hinges. To adjust the depth of cut, put the router right onto the template itself and adjust the bit until it touches this reference point. There is no guesswork. This gives you the perfect depth every time without any type of trial and error. This is a fantastic feature to have on this jig. I have a little slot right here where I can actually put the router in there, and it's away from the edge of the door. Again, that old jig did not have that. So again, that is really, really nice. And I like being able to see right down inside of there exactly what I am cutting. So let's go ahead and get this now cut out. It's so nice to be able to have this slot at the beginning so that you can put the router in, and you don't have to have it where you tilt it in at an angle to start the cutting. The other thing that I really like is being able to see the bit, because as you make this cut around there, now you know exactly where you need to cut to finish removing the material. Wow, the old jig didn't have that. The only way that you knew that you finished is listening to the sound of the router cutting the wood. And that was not an effective way. So let's remove this jig now and let's see how this hinge fits in there. So we can drop the hinge in place, and that fits perfect. Now I can flip the hinge over. If I wanted to mount this right now, I would use the center drill to be able to drill the holes in there to give the exact location, and I would be ready to mount this hinge. This really is a time saver. It's more accurate, very, very precise, and I love having this whole entire kit. Like I said, that old jig is history. It's been a long time since I've been this happy over getting a very simple and effective, and not only that, a very precise jig that works with the doors and these hinges. This has been a fantastic addition to the shop, and yes, I am very excited to have this jig by Banggood in the shop. Now this is the ENJOYWOOD. It's a door hinge jig, and if you do any type of work with the doors and you need to mount the hinges, this certainly is a jig that I would consider. And I will have a link right down there in the description below so that you can take a look at this and get some additional information and perhaps get one for your shop. And if you like this video, by all means, give me a thumbs up, and don't forget, hit that little subscribe button right down there. And if you like this video, you might want to be able to consider taking a look at these videos right over here on some additional tips and tricks to be used in your shop. And for now, I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next video. So for now, Bye-bye, everyone. See you real soon.